one of your hosts, and joining me as always, Isaac and Patrick. What's going on, guys?
Yo,
Hey, how's it going?
Living the dream. Are you still doing some last minute research there, Epic?
Yeah, yeah, I'm
Nice.
looking at all these crazy pictures and oh my God,
Yeah,
I'm a little
there's
freaked
some.
out.
Yeah, there's some interesting ones from today's topic, but we'll get into that in a second. Um, Isaac, how was your week? Anything special?
nothing special. It's one of those weeks of work where I'm busy all the time. We did have a new Pokemon set come out yesterday on Friday, which is pretty sweet.
And we both got some pulls, which makes up for Prismatic. Stupid.
Yeah, this is supposed to be the crown zenith of this generation, so I'm looking forward to being able to get some more. I didn't get very much, so
Nice, nice, man. Are you drinking anything tonight or no?
I just got some water.
I've got the Pepsi Zero Sugar.
Woohoo!
Epic. I haven't talked to you much this week, man. I've just been kind of staring at my computer screen, just waiting for Epic Wilson to pop online. But we all need a week off sometimes. How are you, man?
Yeah, it was a crazy week, but
Yeah.
I'm good.
Are you
I'm
good?
good. Yeah, I'm good.
Everything okay? Life, home, kids?
Yeah, still trying to buy a house. It's still working through the lawyers and everything now, so that's
Well, I
You know,
so. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Isaac.
closing date or anything?
think she put the 15th of August,
Nice.
but I think it's going to be a little bit longer just because we found out it appraised for more, so
Yeah,
I was able to get some closing cost help, which is amazing.
that's
That's awesome,
awesome.
dude. And there's I just left my brain what I was because I was on Monday or Tuesday. I was sitting in Discord with John, and we're just sitting there chatting and stuff. And I'm like, dude, have you spoken to Epic in a couple days? It had to have been Tuesday because I spoke to you the day before, so it wouldn't have raised any red flags. And then I'm like, no, and he really hasn't even texted our group chat at all. So I'm like, oh man, I'm kind of concerned. And then I'm like spam calling Epic, and it's going right to voicemail. And then I'm starting to panic a little bit. So like I'm tech. I don't know how I finally got a hold of you. Just texting you.
Yeah, I think so. Um,
I
I
was
think
real close to calling 911 to check on
why?
you. I couldn't get a hold of you, dude, and it's not like you to go dark for a couple days, man.
Well,
Yeah,
we've got
you
a
need
lot
this.
going on, man. A lot
Just
of
give us a heads up. You know,
a lot of shit.
I just missed you,
Yeah.
and I was worried.
Sometimes,
Hence
yeah.
the
Sometimes
spam.
we go through that, man.
I
Like
know that's me today. I'm like today. I literally didn't want to do anything. I didn't game at all. I didn't talk on Discord. I didn't. It's one of those sit in my chair and stare at my wall days. Except my wall was the entire season of The Penguin on HBO Max. So you know. So we have a lot to get into tonight with this story. I am going to butcher a lot of names, and I'm going to butcher a lot of locations. I'm going to do the best I can with the last minute research that I did. Um, this is a story that has always interested me, and I know we've talked about it a few times. Epic, I know you know a lot about it. And the way we're going to do this is I'm kind of going to skim over a lot of the not important parts, but just so you get the background information and then really zero in on the important parts. And then when we're done, we're going to go through theories, kind of like we did on the Ghost Ship episode, and seeing what you guys think. If I'm going to be straight up reading from Microsoft Word, so if you guys need anything, throw a Pokemon card or something like Gambit at the can. You like the Gambit deep cut there,
yeah.
Channing Tatum Gambit. Um,
Yeah.
but this is the story of Dyatlov Pass, a mystery frozen in time. Dun, 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 dun,
Dun, dun, dun.
I thought you'd like that, Isaac. So, on January 31st, 1959, a 23-year-old ski hiker named Igor Alexeykov Dyatlov embarked on a journey to reach Ortorten, a mountain in the northern Urals. Igor was a Soviet college student, brought a team of 9 experienced hikers with him. And I cannot stress that enough. Remember that the entire story. These guys are not like novices. They're actually grade 2 hikers that were doing this to become grade 3 hikers. Don't ask me what grade means. I don't know. I don't care. I thought it meant that they were really good. Um, so this was supposed to be a 2-week excursion. The group consists, and I'm just going to read first names. The group consisted of Lumilda, who was 20, Alexander, 24, Zenaida, 22, Zendaya, Zenaida, 22, Yuri, 23, Rustem, 23, Nikolai, 23, Semyon, 38, old man, and Yuri, 21.
Let
All
me
young.
let me put up a picture of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Do it. You do it. I'll stop talking when you do. All young, athletic grade 2 hikers at the completion. So this is all them, all very Russian looking or Soviet looking. My bad. Especially the guy with the unibrow. He's my favorite. But these guys, they knew what they were doing. This was supposed to be like an easy thing. I can't say easy thing. It was not an easy thing, but it's nothing that they couldn't handle, right? Like I get winded walking up a small hill in my backyard, so these guys are experienced. I'm grade 2 fat, just working on getting to grade 1. Before he left, Dyatlov had told the sports club that he and his team would send a telegram by February 21st as soon as they returned. On February 2nd, 1959, the group set up camp on the slopes of Kholat Syakhl, and we'll remember that later, and Dyatlov Pass. During the night, something happened to these members. The Ural Mountains, or the Urals, are a mountain range that runs from north to south through western Russia. Just to give you a little geography, from the coast of the Arctic Ocean to the Ural River and northwestern Kazakhstan, my favorite stan. The range forms part of the conventional boundary between the continents of Europe and Asia. The climate is continental. The average January temperatures increase from -4 degrees to -4 degrees Fahrenheit to 5 degrees Fahrenheit. So it sits around there usually. July is 50 degrees to 68 degrees, so that's as warm as it gets. The northern Urals are dominated by conifers, namely Siberian pine, Scots pine, Siberian spruce, Norway spruce, whatever all these trees are. I'm not going to get this. On January 31st, so it's a heavily wooded hill, but it's a pass, right? It's heavily wooded. There are some tribesmen that live in this area in the mountains, and we'll get into that later. On February 1st, the group started to move through the area today known as the Dyatlov Pass. They planned to get over the pass and make camp for the next night on the opposite side, but because of worsening weather conditions, they deviated west up toward the top of Kholat Syakhl. This was either intentional or they got disoriented in the snowstorm. Fading light may also have been a factor, as they likely needed to erect the tent before sunset. Dyatlov decided to stop and set up camp there on the slope of the mountain in the late afternoon rather than moving 1.5 kilometers down the hill to a forested area. Nobody knows really why they made that decision, and I think ultimately, in my opinion, that decision is what led to their downfall, is not going back to the wooded area, but we'll see. Dyatlov probably did not want to lose the altitude they had gained, or he decided to practice camping on a mountain slope. The location of the tent was within sight of Mount Koltorten, and so they were almost there, home stretch. Sometime, so I'm skipping over a couple things here. And they had I want to stress, I don't have his name. I forget what it is. Maybe Epic can pull it up. But there was one guy that was with him, and I thought I put something that was in there about him, but I guess not. Maybe it's later. There was one guy that was with them that didn't feel good and turned back and went back down the mountain, and that is the only survivor. They also did run into some of the tribesmen on their way up the mountain, and they're like, do not go up there. And they kept saying, one of the tribesmen kept saying the name of the, what was the name of the mountain again? Kholat Syakhl, which coincidentally means Death Mountain or Dead Mountain.
Sure.
And the tribesmen were trying to get them to stop, but they were hell bent on it, so whatever. So sometime in the late evening of February 1st or in the early morning of February 2nd, something happened that meant Dyatlov and the other 8 hikers left the warmth and comfort of their tent and headed down the slope to the trees around a mile away. For reasons unknown, they hurriedly left the area, with several of them not wearing boots or proper clothing. The evidence appears to point to the tent being cut from the inside to aid in their escape, but they seem to have walked down a hill in an orderly manner. So it wasn't frantic or anything like that. They walked down the hill. And now here's where we're going to jump around a lot because the search party and what happened is there's a lot of big gaps in between them. And then as we're doing the autopsies and the search party and things like that, that's when we'll find out more weird stuff about what happened with them. Basically, these guys went up the mountain. They're camping in the tent. Something happened. They freaked out, cut their way out of the tent, walked down the hill without their shoes or clothes on or anything. Some of them had clothes. Some of them were partially undressed. Definitely not clothes that they would be wearing in this weather, right, normally.
Yeah.
And the weirdest part to me was the cutting from the inside out of the tent.
Yeah,
It goes to the door, right?
Yeah.
So, and we're gonna go over all that. Just keep that in your head.
So the guy that left the party before they went up is Yuri Yudin.
Okay. Did he leave? Did he leave before they even touched the mountain?
Yeah, so he turned back before the group reached their final campsite on the mountain.
Okay.
So it was about 5 days into the trip. He headed back. His sciatica was flaring up really bad. Anybody that has back trouble is not going to climb a mountain.
So, and I think, can you bring up? Never save that other picture for later. I want to get into that in a little bit.
Okay. Well, I'm going to show. I can show you where the people were found and things like that. So when you want that picture, show them.
Okay.
Just let them know.
Yep, we're going to go through all the search party stuff right now. So as soon as we get to the end of that, we will bring up the picture. The Dyatlov group was, we already went over that. Initially, officials were reluctant to start an emergency search and rescue mission for the missing hikers because of the heavy snowfall around Mount Torten and Kholat Syakhl meant that it was first assumed the poor weather had delayed the group. However, pressure from the relatives of the hikers to the local head of the Communist Party eventually forced the authorities to organize a search. And this was the weirdest search party I've ever witnessed. The head of military department, UPI, Colonel Georgiev, took charge of the search and rescue operation, and several students from Polytechnic volunteered, and they also pulled some inmates to help. So I don't really know where the inmates came in, but whatever. Several rescue parties were sent to the region on February 21st. One of these groups was headed by Blinov, another by Sogrin. Is this the search party?
This is the search party. So
Okay.
as you can see, they're not really. I don't know. They just don't look.
They're not grade 2 hikers.
No.
So on February 22nd, several prison guards also came to help search. And Boris's team was dropped near Mount Torten. Boris was one of the head of the search parties. Dyatlov's final destination on February 24th, they reached the mountain and concluded that the hikers never made it there, as there was no record of the summit. So they pretty much, went up and down the hiking path, didn't find them, went all the way to the mountain, didn't find them. So they're like, okay, what's going on? And then we remember that they veered off because of the snowstorm. February 25th, Boris and his group found a trail of skis that he assumed to be that of the Dyatlov party. On February 26th, rescuers discovered their campsite on the slopes of Kholat Syakhl, a name eerily translating to Dead Mountain in the local Mansi language, which is the tribe. The next day, they discovered the tent on the slope of Kholat Syakhl. Photos were taken on February 27th. On examination, the sides of the tent were cut from the inside. The nature and form of all cuts suggest they were formed by contact with the canvas inside the tent with the blade of a knife. The entrance of the tent was looking south. The north part was covered between 15 to 20 centimeters of snow, so not really a lot of snow. Not a crazy amount. It was unclear from the investigation reports whether the tent was cut on both sides and whether the door was fastened. Lack of detailed photographs of the snow in the area made it difficult to ascertain who had been in the vicinity before the search party arrived. However, searchers recalled that there were definitely 8 to 9 tracks of footprints left by hikers who wore almost no footwear. Their feet pressed the snow, leaving characteristic columns of pressed snow with a footprint on top. Members of the group walked in a single file with a tall man walking in the back. His footprints partially covered other footprints of those who walked before him. Overall, the path gave an impression of an organized and unrushed descent down the slope of the mountain. Several, like that part kills me too. Cut your way out of a tent and then just leisurely walk down the mountain. Like, okay. Several trails would deviate from the general direction and then rejoin the group. It did not look like the Dyatlov group had run for their lives from the tent in any disorganized frenzy. Vladimir Korotev, who was a young investigator, recalled the events of the time and said that a major break in the case was made almost by accident. A woman was called to help mend his uniform. She looked at the tent confidently and said the cuts were made from the inside. So that's how they found out where, because like a seamstress was there, and she's like, "Oh, that was cut from the inside." So that was kind of cool. So the tent. The tent was located on the northeastern slope. The campsite consisted of a pad of flattened snow. On the bottom were stacked 8 pairs of skis. The tent was stretched on poles and fixed with ropes. 9 backpacks were located in the bottom of the tent, and they contained various personal items such as jackets, raincoats, and 9 pairs of shoes. There were also men's pants, pairs of boots, warm fur coats, ski caps, all that, which you think they would be wearing if they went outside. And an itinerary and many other small items and documents were also found. A satirical propaganda leaflet by the Dyatlov group put together was found near the tent's entrance. It was concluded from the general appearance and density of the snow in the area that the tent's condition was not caused by an avalanche but blown over by the wind. So any snow that was on the tent was from the wind only. Near the tent, a pair of skis were sticking out from the snow. In the entrance of the tent was a ice axe. On the side of the tent, a flashlight was located. It was strange that there was a layer of snow 2 to 4 inches thick under the flashlight. There was no snow on top of it, and it was snowed slightly on either side. So that's a little weird, but whatever.
So I threw up here the actual picture of the tent. It's item B. So item A is, pictures of them hiking or at the time. But here's the tent. As you can see, it's been cut. There's the pair of skis. And the snow's really not that deep. So you can look down here and you can see the rocks.
Is that the trees down there that they walked to, probably?
Yeah, down in there.
Bob, yeah. Okay. So what made them leave the tent? The footprints suggest they left in a fairly calm and orderly manner. However, they would have known the importance of proper footwear, being grade 2 hikers, and outerwear in these sub-zero temperatures, and it seems strange that they did not spend a minute or two gathering these key items. Nothing but fear of imminent death would have gotten them to leave without their boots and stuff. Once at the shelter of the tree line, they successfully made a fire, which they may have believed would be sufficient if they could return to the tent. They may have wrongly believed the avalanche was imminent and wanted to seek shelter in the tree line until it passed. In the hours and days ahead, the whole group died. So, on February 27th, 1959, at 11 a.m., a short distance, around 1 mile from the group's tent, Mikhail and Boris, students at the Polytechnic Institute assisting for the search, found the first 2 set of remains. The bodies were Yuri Doroshenko and Yuri K. Neither Sherevin nor Kopetlov were questioned during the investigation. Sherevin said by the time the investigation was conducted, he was in the hospital and couldn't testify. While looking carefully around the area, Mikhail noticed something dark close to a cedar tree. There was a flat area next to the cedar, and on this were the remains of a fire. About 3 meters from the fire, they found Yuri frozen without his clothes, so he was naked, and his hand was burned, which was also a little bit weird. And a little to the side, they found the other Yuri K, in the same state, hand also burned, naked. Under Doroshenko's body, there were 3 or 4 cedar branches about the same thickness. Describing the condition of the bodies for the official record, Vasily, what the prosecutor of the criminal case stated, Krivit K's right leg had no footwear. On his left foot, there was a brown sock that was torn. Another sock like this was discovered, half burnt next to the fire. On the back of his hand, the skin was torn. Between the fingers, there is blood. The index finger is also torn. The skin of the left shin is torn, covered in blood. There are no more visible injuries in the body. Doroshenko has woolen socks on his feet, and over these socks, another lighter sock. His ear, lips, and nose were covered in blood. On his left hand, middle finger was bloody. At the time, however, it wasn't obvious that one of the these corpses, they were, when we get to them, they're in like various states of decomposition. You can probably pull up that map now where they found all of them.
All right.
It's not going to get any spoilers to the story, but you can just leave it up if you want. A student in the search party, Vadim, made a statement for the criminal case. Next to the bodies was a fire. Nearby, there were 10 small fir tree branches cut with a finished knife. The lower dry branches, about 5 centimeters in diameter, had been cut from the cedar. Some of these were lying next to the fire, and the snow was trampled. It's possible to conclude that the people had since been by the fire. We found various garments next to it, rather on the bodies, but we didn't find any other bodies. And another weird thing is, and it also, the way that the trees were broken, it also looked like one of them tried to scale the tree for whatever reason. Maslenkov stated that Doroshenko and Kay, maybe with the help of others, had made a pretty good fire with the branches. 20 meters around the cedar, there was evidence. Oh, I already went through that. So, several wool and cotton socks were found scattered around the fire. A woman's handkerchief was burned through in several places, as well as some fragments of woolen clothes, but we didn't find any actual clothes themselves. In particular, we found a cuff of a dark sweater there, not on the bodies. We found some money, 8 rubles. All the lower branches of the cedar within arm's reach were broken completely. One was 13 to 16 feet, and they were thick. Only the body weight of a full-grown person could probably break them from climbing them. So that's how they ascertained that they climbed the trees. Igor Dyatlov was found 300 meters from the cedar tree, face up, head towards the tent above the snow line. Only his hands were visible, with his fist clenched in front of his chest. Search efforts continued, but 2 months went by without a trace of the remaining 4 hikers. So at this point, weather was getting bad. They gave up search for the other 4 hikers. And then things get even more weird. In May 1959, enough snow had melted when a Manzi native, Kurikov, with his dog, noticed some cut branches forming sort of a trail which they followed. 164 feet from the cedar, he came across some black cotton sweatpants. The right leg cut off with a knife, and some cedar branches. A young fir tree was missing its top, and he came across another piece of clothing. He left half of the woman's light brown sweater, the right half, and sleeves and cuff. The sweater was presumed to belong to Ludmila. 50 feet up the bank from the stream, Kurikov found half of the beige sweater and another half of the ski trousers. The area was previously searched with avalanche probes, but the snow was very deep at the time. Ural Polytechnical students and Boris assisted in the search, and they followed some of the small fir trees. In this area, they found kind of a makeshift den where they tried to, like what they set their tent on, right, where they dig in the snow and they try to make a flat ground. In the ski, they list the clothes that they found. I don't think any of it's important. They found a spoon and knife sheath from the den, but surprisingly no knife, as a sharp instrument had clearly been used to cut branches. The bodies were found a few meters away from the clothes. All clothes had been cut when they were taken from the bodies. Bodies of Tybalt and Brignoles were better dressed. Ludmila, fur jacket, and hat were found on Zolo. So they're all wearing each other's clothes at this point.
Yeah. Well, so one of the theories is when they broke out of the tent, like, people just grabbed what they had.
Yeah.
So, everything kind of got jumbled, and then they just headed down the mountain.
Right. And they also, one of the theories is also that as they died, they took their clothes to try to stave off whatever's happening. A fragment of flesh was found 13 feet deep in the snow, where Dubinina's body was found in a ravine May 5th, 1959. This was the official record. On the northwest slope of Hill 880, about 50 meters from the Cedar, in a stream, we have discovered 4 bodies, 3 men and 1 woman. The body of the woman had been identified as Ludmila. The bodies of the men cannot be identified without removing them from the water. They are buried in snow 2.5 meters deep. The men are lying with their heads facing north and downstream. The body of the woman is lying upstream. She is dressed in a small skull cap and a yellow sleeveless shirt, then a flannel shirt, 2 sweaters, one gray and the other dark, and our legs are leggings and brown ski trousers. On one of the foot are woolen socks. On our right foot is a bound half beige sweater, so the other half of the sweater. On the back of her head, there are traces of damage from our probe. Her body is decaying. The first man was dressed in khaki-colored windbreaker, and on his wrist he had 2 watches, one Pobeda and the other Sportif. The Pobeda had stopped at 8:38, and the Sportif showed 8:15. It's not possible to see the head and legs of his body because he is not completely exposed. The other 2 bodies lie in kind of a hug, both with nothing on their heads and some of their hair missing. They are both dressed in windbreakers, but it's hard to say anything else due to the decomposition and how they're buried. The bodies were decaying. We have photographed them. There are photographs. They need to be taken out of the stream immediately because they are decaying fast and will be lost to the stream. It was Vladimir's probe that damaged Dubina's neck. He recalled the distance between all the heads of those he found in the brook were about 11.5 inches. They were all very close to each other. He also said that Dubina's head was lying down on kind of a natural ledge with water pouring over it, and her mouth was open. It was also stated that the tongue was missing from her mouth. And on some of the other bodies for the other 2 guys, the eyes and tongue were missing. That's where it kind of gets weird. We can chalk that up to, soft tissue that animals eat.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
100%. If like people that go missing, like in the forest and stuff, that type of tissue is usually one of the first things that goes.
but just the way she was found, also, like, she was found on a ledge, and some of her injuries from the autopsy, it wouldn't be death from hitting her head on a ledge.
No.
And the way that her mouth was stuck in it, like a kind of a scream when they found her, was interesting to me.
Well, it's funny because like one of the major things they describe about these injuries that they have, it's seriously like a car wreck. Some of these people
we're getting into that right now.
Smashed up. So
yeah, it's so crazy. The injuries don't make sense at all. Epic is completely right. In fact, when we get there, I'm going to have Epic. I'm going to post you the next little bit of this. Give us 1 second, folks. It's in the studio chat.
Okay. You want me to read it or?
Yep.
Okay, sure. You start off with a crazy Russian name. Sure. Askandes said that Colonel Oktova grabbed a notepad from Soltrovana's hand, looked at it, cursed, and said, "He's written nothing." So he appears to be the only one who saw the notepad. Its whereabouts are unknown, as it was never filed in evidence. So they found a notepad there that somebody tried to write on, but there was nothing on the notepad, unfortunately. So Colonel Ort, I'm not going to say his name again, and some soldiers took all the bodies from the stream, carried them up the bank, and then placed them in special stretchers to basically remove them from the mountain. They then took them up to a pass to the helipad. A helicopter arrived, but the pilots refused to take the bodies on board, complaining this was outside their official duties, which is kind of suspicious, right? It's said that the pilots knew the bodies were radioactive.
What?
So
Yeah.
this
that's
is
gonna be
another
more
theory.
later.
Yep.
Yeah.
So the pilots knew the bodies were radioactive and, for that reason, did not want them in the aircraft. Colonel Ort sent the following radiogram. This is a scandal. And 14 other people brought these bodies on our shoulders, and they refused to take the bodies in spite of my insistence. Now, I want you to think about how a colonel orders would be rejected by a pilot, like the helicopter pilot. They defied his orders. There's no way. As a communist, I am outraged by the behavior of the crew and ask you to inform the Communist Party leader about it. And I have to mention to you, for clarity, that these bodies are frozen. We packed them for transportation, and there was no reason to refuse to take them. The medical expert refused to examine or cut these bodies here on site. It's absolutely not dangerous from the point of hygiene. They are folded and covered in special impervious material. Famous Russian impervious material. The crew said, but still, the crew said they would not transport them until they are in zinc coffins. Colonel Ort was forced to get out his pistol and threaten the crew. Vladimir Iskandis intervened, after which the medical expert reorganized how the bodies should be packed for transportation. And they were finally airlifted for transportation to Evdel. It's probably the idea of ex-soldier Zolotrovo.
One of the hikers was an ex-soldier.
Yeah, to build the den. So the one ex-soldier that they found, and that kind of brings us into another thing that we'll get into in a little bit later as well. Zolotrova built this snow den. So it's a common winter survival technique if you're lost and you need to get shelter. It may have offered the best chance for survival for those who remain behind, waiting to be rescued. The cedar branches were also minimized contact with the snow and ice beneath it. So that's kind of why they were still there and stuff.
Yeah. And I thought I copied and pasted it, but I guess I didn't. The autopsies, I guess I just glossed over the autopsies. So we talked about the eyes and tongues missing. We talked about how some of them were missing like patches of flesh and things like that. We talked about how a couple of them had burn marks, whatever that was, and they had significant trauma internally. But none of their outside soft skin showed any signs of trauma. No bruising, nothing. It was all internal, which is strange. So these are the main theories of what happened in this incident, and then we'll kind of go over some stuff as we go through the theories. I want to note too that there was record from another. Actually, I might get into that. Hold on. Mansi tribesmen. Early on, many Soviets suspected that the students' deaths were the result of an ambush by the local Mansi tribesmen. A sudden attack would account for the way the hikers fled, their tents, their disarray, and the damage done to the second group of bodies. Initial speculation, this was just initial speculation. They were reindeer herders, but the investigation indicated that the nature of the deaths did not support this hypothesis. Only the hikers' footprints were visible, and they showed no sign of hand-to-hand struggle. Investigators then conceived of a swift, violent avalanche. The sound of snow collapsing, an early warning sign of things to come, would have frightened the hikers out of their tents in a state of undress and sent them sprinting for the tree line. An avalanche would also have been powerful enough to inflict the injuries that killed the second groups of students. Despite the compelling avalanche theory, controversy came up. Would the experienced hikers have made camp in a spot that was prone to avalanches? Then there was the fact that when the investigators found the bodies, they noted no evidence that the avalanche had occurred any time in the region. There was no damage to the tree line, and searchers observed no debris. No avalanches have been recorded in that site before, nor have there been any since. The location of the incident did not have any obvious signs, and I go a little bit in deeper with this one because the avalanche theory was my leading theory for a long time. The location of the incident did not have any obvious signs of avalanche having occurred. It would have left like patterns and debris, stuff like that. More than 100 expeditions to the region have been held since this incident. I know, guys, 12 people died up here. Let's do this. And none of them ever reported conditions that might create an avalanche. A study of the area was used using up-to-date terrain physics, and the dangerous conditions found in another nearby area had significantly steeper slopes were observed in April, and no avalanches there as well. An analysis of the terrain and slope showed that even if there could have been a very specific avalanche in the area, its path would have gone past the tent. The tent had collapsed from the side, but not in a horizontal direction. Dyatlov was an inexperienced skier, and the much older Zolotaryov was studying for his master's certificate in ski instruction and mountain hiking. Neither of these two men would have been likely to camp anywhere in the path of a potential avalanche. Footprints patterns leading away from the tent were inconsistent with someone, let alone a group of 9, running from panic from an avalanche.
You know, and I gotta interject there. That Zolotaryov guy, he has a cool mustache.
Yeah, he does.
Like if that dude, you know, he wouldn't have set up base there.
No, he
So,
knows what he's doing.
Yeah, he knows what if he's got that mustache, he's got time to do that.
Yeah.
100%.
Mm-hmm.
He's even got the little curl on the end. See that?
His mustache gel was not found though. Just FYI.
Oh,
Yeah.
see, that's he wouldn't have left the tent without that.
So, the next theory, which is probably a partial correct theory, there was something else. I believe that there was an external influence on why they left the tent, but I ultimately believe they died from hypothermia. Hypothermia was the next theory. Paradoxal undressing has been proposed, but does not account for leaving the warm tent. Paradoxal undressing is that when you're getting hypothermia, you think you're burning up and you're so hot you just end up taking off your clothes. The International Science Times posted that the hikers' deaths were caused by hypothermia, which can induce behavior known as paradoxal undressing, in which hypothermic subjects remove their clothes in response to perceived feelings of burning warmth. It is undisputed that 6 of the 9 hikers died from hypothermia. However, others in the group appear to have acquired additional clothing from those that have already died, which suggests they were of sound enough mind to try to add layers. So that kind of, like, there was no, for a while was like some mass hysteria event as well.
Yeah.
But if they're smart enough to continue doing these things to try to survive, like they were saying, the guy that climbed the tree was trying to climb the tree to look to see where the tent was to go back to it. So I don't really buy the paradoxal undressing and the not in their right mind. Also, the footprints on the slope suggest they walked down, or again the footprints, which suggest against hallucinations, which hardly could be similar for the entire group, or at least decisive majority of the group. If we are viewing hallucination as to why the hikers left the tent, then I would expect more individual and more chaotic footprints. Okay, so the next one is katabatic wind, which is a technical name for a drainage wind, a wind that carries high-density air from higher elevation down the slope under a force of gravity. Such winds are sometimes called fall winds. Katabatic winds can rush down elevated slopes at hurricane speeds, but most are not as intense as that. Winds are most commonly found blowing out of Antarctica and Greenland, large and elevated ice sheets that build up high-density cold air over the ice sheets. And elevation could play like an enormous amount in it. Obviously, they weren't on any glaciers or anything like that. Winds are concentrated in restricted areas and coastal valleys. The winds blow well over. Yeah, we already got that. So that was. I don't have the reason that might come later, but that it wasn't winds. There was also a report that, or it was a picture that the night before from the camera, they found a bunch of pictures on one of the bodies, or they found a camera. In one of the pictures, there was bright lights in the sky that they were taking pictures of, and it looked like they were falling. Right? It wasn't anything crazy. It looked like they were falling. And then they in one of the journals it said that they could hear like a high whistling noise throughout these last couple nights. Obviously not on the guy that they found nothing in his journal, but they did find a couple written things. Next theory is fire. One of the photos shows what looks like a makeshift metal exhaust pipe out of one of the tents. They used a metal stove for heat and cooking, bits of cooked food. I think the fire thing is stupid because it doesn't really. I mean, it shoved them out of their tent, but why would they not have dealt with it?
Exactly.
And then we get into the out there theories, or are they? Russian Yeti, the Mank. With humans effectively ruled out as culprits, some postulated that they would be non-human assailants. People began to whisper the hikers were killed by a Mank, a kind of Russian Yeti, to account for the immense force and power necessary to cause the injuries to the 3 students. This theory is popular among those who focus on the damage to Dubina's face, while the most explain her missing tissue by posting a visit from tiny scavengers or perhaps decay. Mank proponents see more as sinister predator at work. Can you pull up the picture of the blurry guy?
Yeah, I just, I gotta say to Isaac's reaction there, don't discard this just yet.
Yeah.
There was
discard the
proof
Yeti.
out, so they took a picture.
Yeah. So this picture, someone was following them. They found that in the notes too. Yeah. And he's clearly not in a ski coat and hood. So it could not absolutely be one of the hikers that's lagging a little bit behind. On February 2nd, 1959. It goes on about the Russian Yeti, but we're not going to go into this because I think it's silly. The final theory that we're going to go into, and then we're going to go into a couple questions, and then we'll be done. The final theory is military cover-up. Small amounts of radiation were detected on the bodies, and this led to wild theories that some secret radioactive weapon had killed the students. Those who favor this idea stress the strange appearance of the bodies at the funerals. Their corpses had slightly orange, withered, cast look to them. But had radiation been the cause of death, more than modest levels would have been registered when the bodies were examined. The corpse's orange hue isn't surprising given the frigid conditions. Once the secret military weapon was proposed, it was too sexy a concept to let die. Some say the team was fortunate enough to stumble into a USSR testing a concussive weapon, perhaps a parachute mine exercise. The explanation is popular because it is partially supported by the testimony of another hiking group. This is where it came from. Sorry, I lied earlier about the lights. Another hiking group on that night, they spoke of strange orbs floating around the sky on Kholat Syakhl, a site proponents of the theory to interpret distant explosions. The hypothesis is that the concussive sound drove the hikers from their tents in a panic. Half clothed, the first group died of hypothermia while attempting to take shelter from the blast by waiting by the tree line. The second group, having seen the first group freeze, determined to go back to their belongings but fell victim to hypothermia as well. While the third group got caught in a fresh blast further into the forest and died from their injuries. The chief investigator of the Dyatlov Pass incident said, "I suspected at the time and am almost sure now that these bright flying spheres had direct connection to the group's death." Censorship and secrecy in the USSR forced him to abandon this line of inquiry. In the end, the hikers' deaths were officially attributed to a compelling natural force, and the case was closed. However, in 2019, Russian officials reopened the case for a new investigation. This time, however, officials are only considering 3 theories: an avalanche, a snow slab, or a hurricane. The pass, the pass in which the hikers lost their lives was named Dyatlov Pass in honor of them, and there's a monument that was erected at the cemetery for them. One of the main questions is what made the hikers to cut the tent and leave it underdressed, to a certain extent barefoot. The forensic expert Tumanov, he was very sure and silenced that one of them was hit in the temple hard with a blunt, flat weapon, highly likely causing an immediate state of unconsciousness. He didn't ever exit again. Krivon, whatever, bit off his own piece of flesh and died. Immediately after that, since he didn't spit out neither swallowed that foreign body in his mouth. That's not a common episode for hypothermia.
No, that's not a typical reaction. Is for you to start eating yourself.
So and then people go into, well, they just fell into the ravine, right?
Yeah, no.
The deepness where the last four found was kind of exaggerated. There's a lot of videos on YouTube. In summer, it's no way deep. In winter, it's a little deeper. In unlucky conditions, the victim could probably experience a fall from 2 meters high. While I can't completely rule out the accident of the last four falling into the ravine and fatally injuring themselves on stones in the stream, the event of 4 people falling at once seems to be rather impossible.
Here's your ravine.
Yeah.
So it is big. So this is the height that they said they fell.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that kills like 4 people.
That's like 12 feet.
Yeah.
And all 4 of them falling at the same time? Who knows?
At least one of them will land on the other guy.
Why was there trace amounts of radiation? Why were heat exposure burns on hands and legs?
Mm-hmm.
And they were at the ridgeline, no signs of extreme panic. Why?
So I'm gonna show up a sign which I threw up earlier, but I don't think you caught my wind. But there are some signs posted around Dyatlov Pass, which I have no idea what that says, but I'm assuming it's bad because it's got a radiation symbol on it, and it's thick lettering, so you know. But
That's
these
really
are
finely stenciled, though. I'm impressed.
Yeah, that's good stuff. But there's a lot of theories. Okay, there's also a theory about KGB agents being embedded in this. So to get even wackier, there was some talk about 3 people that joined the party later that turned out to be KGB agents. These 3 guys here. Now, why was the KGB with this group of hikers?
Yeah.
Kind of weird. But which brings you into the whole military thing, right? So if the KGB is involved, then maybe they are trying to figure out why these guys want to hike up there and see what's going on. So, I don't know.
Yeah, no one knows. Like any theory that's out there that sounds good, there's always another counter to it that I found, right? Like there's always something that was like, not typical human behavior. Again, this isn't a typical situation, and we can never know what happened. We'll never know what happened. A lot of the evidence was mismanaged and didn't make it back. So it was. No, we're not talking about the Buffalo Bills, John. Please respect the dead. So a lot of it was mismanaged, never made it to the facilities. Yeah, I don't know. Isaac, what do you think? What's your theory?
Dude, how long did it take for everyone to die? Was it all in one night, or was it like
They all died in the same night?
Okay,
Yeah,
'cause
this
that's a
was
lot
10
of
hours.
that's a lot of activity for one night.
Yeah.
People are cutting down trees. They're like making beds, making shelters.
And also keep in mind that they didn't find the bodies for a long time.
Yeah, right.
No matter what happened. And some of the bodies weren't until 4 months later. So I'm going Russian Yeti.
Well, what if it was like people that were like hostile towards them, and they were like, well, do we think it was like storming that night? Like, was
It
the
was
weather
bad.
bad? Okay.
There was snowfall, heavy snowfall.
But it was more the
Um,
wind. The wind
yeah.
was the big problem.
And the wind
Yeah.
kind of makes up for like the high pitched noises they were hearing, especially in the mountain or concussive mines.
So, they talked about orbs, right? And
Yeah.
they talked about radioactive area. So, what if it was a Soviet test? And one of the main theories, like Rob touched on before, that there was an explosion it shook these guys to their core. They thought it was an avalanche or something. They're struggling to get out. They rip open their tents and then they just run because they think they're getting attacked. So they walk down the hill and meet their maker by hypothermia. But that doesn't talk about the car crash like injuries that these people had internally.
And the fall into that ravine that you showed me would not cause those type of injuries.
No.
Well, I was thinking like because one of the theories was like hostile people, that like the natives or something.
Yeah. Well, hey, let's talk about that, Isaac.
If it was like storming really bad, say these like hostile people or whoever come to them and they're standing outside like the front of the tent, like waiting for them to come out or yelling at them or whatever. Maybe they thought we can cut a hole, sneak out the back, and like sneak away, and they won't even see us because the storm's so bad. So they do that, and they get it down to wherever they get to. But then hypothermia gets them.
So your theory is people.
I'm just thinking of something that could have caused it. That sort of
I don't know.
It makes sense.
I want to try to find the avalanche slab theory. That one was the most intriguing.
Here's a better picture of the tent.
Nice.
And at the time, Soviet Russia, you can't count anything out. Not all jokes set aside.
What is it, Mother Russia? The bears take you. What was that guy that used to? There was a comedian back in the '80s or something, Smirnov or whatever. I don't know his name, but he was always like, "Oh, in Soviet Russia, they take you," or some crap. I don't know.
So here's an article saying that. The National Geographic has so many ads popping up. Have scientists finally unraveled the 60-year mystery surrounding 9 Russian hikers' deaths? New research identifies an unusual avalanche as the culprit behind the 1959 Dyatlov Pass incident. Sorry, I'm trying to skip past everything we just talked about and find what the avalanche is. So today, the so-called Dyatlov Pass incident, named after the group's leader, is one of Russia's most enduring mysteries, spawning conspiracy theories, military cover-up, UFO sightings, abdominal snowman, radiation fallout from secret weapons, Mansi tribe. We do not claim to have solved the Dyatlov Pass mystery, as no one survived to tell the story. But we show the plausibility of the avalanche hypothesis. 2019, Russian authorities announced plans to revisit the incident, which they attributed not to a crime but to an avalanche, a snow slab, or a hurricane. The following year, the inquiry pinned the hiker's death on a combination of an avalanche and poor visibility. As the state-owned RIA news agency reported in July 2020, the official findings suggested that a torrent of snow slabs or blocky chunks surprised the sleeping victims and pushed them to seek shelter at a nearby ridge. Unable to see more than 50 feet ahead, the hikers froze to death as they attempted to make their way back to their tent. Given the official findings, lack of key scientific details, as well as the Russian government's notorious lack of transparency, this explanation failed to quell the public's curiosity. Critics of the slab avalanche theory cite 4 main counter-arguments. The lack of physical traces of an avalanche by the rescuers, the more than 9-hour gap between the hikers building their camp, a process that required cutting into the mountain to form a barrier against the wind, and their panic departure, the shallow slope of the campsite, and the traumatic injuries sustained by the group. So
I got a little bit about the radiation theory.
Go for it.
So we talk about nuclear weapon testing or things like that. However, I'm just reading now that one of the hikers, Krivenchenko, was an engineer at the Koblinski -40, the Mayak nuclear weapons facility, on the cleanup of a storage disaster that contaminated 23,000 square kilometers of land in the southern Ural region. So, according to his brother, there was a fairly large emission of radiation. Krivenchenko tried to quit due to the complete unwillingness to work in this system, which kind of explains the KGB, right? So his clothes tested positive for radiation, as did Zena's, who lived in the contaminated zone. So those two bodies had radiation, but they were. When did this radiation occur? Right. So
Yeah, I don't know how long. Oh, no longer. I don't know how long like radiation would settle on the body if it's there forever. I mean, it was only trace amounts, right?
Yep.
And they thought they figured it out with the stone slab, where that was a mixture of or snow slab, Kabatic winds and the avalanche, where the winds form blocks and just send blocks of like snow and ice shooting down the mountain. But again, there's a lot of counter arguments to that too. I just think it was a super interesting story and one that'll never be solved.
Right.
There's a story that on the night before they were in a tavern as well, and there was another group that just kept looking over at the hiking group like they knew them from somewhere. And people said that they looked military as well. So who knows? At the end of the day, we'll never know.
So that day, we talked about the mines or whatever being dropped from the sky or things like that. There was actually a top secret experimental weapons test going on nearby. They were shooting meteorological rockets, which were observed on the 1st of February by Carlin's group. So that's the other group of hikers that Rob was just mentioning.
Okay.
The theory is that the Dyatlov whatever group witnessed the top secret weapons test, and they were killed to keep the program quiet. Long shot, but I don't think they would kill them for witnessing a rocket test, right?
I don't know. One dude that poor Otto guy set a sign on the floor and came back dead. That was the worst. I read his whole story the other day.
Oh yeah.
That was awful. They arrested him and tortured him for a year?
Mhm.
No more than that.
Yep. And then they released him when he was like brain dead.
Brain dead state. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mother Russia.
Yeah.
So yeah, did you find Dyatlov Pass interesting, Isaac?
Yeah, it's another one of those unexplained like mysteries, and it's another one of those things that happened like so long, like the 50s, right?
So it's
It's
not
so
like
hard
it's
to find
entirely possible. Stuff got lost in the shuffle.
Yeah,
Things weren't as everything now is electronic. Things aren't. It's easy to
yeah,
lose a notepad.
and the
So I don't know.
weather, and yeah.
I'm still going Russian Yeti though.
Russian Yeti. You're going.
I'm staying with Russian Yeti.
Nobody
Look at the
mentioned
picture.
you.
Pull up the picture again. It's Russian Yeti.
Okay.
You can't tell me. Oh,
So this was the last image on his camera.
okay.
The last image on Kringfinchenko's film roll taken on or after the day of his death, and it's supposed to show the bell or the orbs.
It just looks like lens flare to me.
Yep.
Yeah,
So-
it could be like a campfire.
Yeah.
Or it could be missiles. It's
Yeah, you don't know.
lots of times you find the truth like somewhere in the middle.
Somewhere in the middle.
So there are pictures if you're curious of all the bodies that were found, Isaac.
Yeah.
They're not as pull up one Epic. They're not as gross as I thought they'd be, but they're definitely decomposed. Man, we needed a lighter topic. We've been going weird for like 3 weeks now. What's so 2 weeks we're going to finally do our Expedition 33 review.
Yeah.
I'm pretty excited about that. You finished it then, huh? Well, Epic's looking for these bodies.
Yeah. Yeah, finally got it done. It's such a great game.
Overall, 1 to 10.
9.5.
9.5 slices.
Yeah.
That's impressive. That's
Nine and
good.
a half. I couldn't get those last couple bites.
Yeah, I would say probably 9.5 as well is good. Is that one of the bodies?
This is Dobina, so you see how she's laying on that shelf that you talked about earlier. So
Yeah. That's not.
bent
I
a
don't
little
know.
graphically. So
There was okay. I need to find this article. There was evidence that her body was moved as well. She initially died from the autopsy. It showed that she initially died laying on her back, and it was moved to the ridgeline. So who knows?
yep, that's kind of like some of these really weird conspiracies.
All on their
is
back, yeah.
They were moved. Like, why would somebody die on their back if they're freezing? You know, like you'd be.
The autopsy guy that I mentioned has a whole YouTube video about it. It's actually really interesting. There were some. He went over a lot of stuff that disproves Avalanche, and this dude's got credentials. He's not like a YouTuber or anything. He's forensic autopsy and everything. He's sure that she died laying on her back somehow, but somehow got to that position.
Yeah,
Which
I
is
mean,
even stranger.
You should be able to see like the content and stuff, you know, inside the body, like how it is laid out.
And don't you guys think like if it was like a bear or anything like that, you'd see bite marks, right?
No, they'd be tore up. So
Yeah.
if you look at bear attacks, this isn't a bear attack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. You want to explain the what do you think about the body on the back there, Epic? Hold on a second. I have to take a moment.
I think they were moved. I think legit, she was moved at least. Because if you looked at the picture again, she's posed on sleeping on the shelf, right? And it looked like she was dragged there. So maybe somebody thought she was still alive, so they tried to pull her there and set her so they could work on trying to, you know, save their own lives.
That could
Could an avalanche or like snow melt move the bodies?
be.
It
Not
could.
from your back to your front.
I mean, it's deep snow. It starts melting. You're gonna
Right,
get all
could
wobbly.
be. Could
But
be.
it's not
Yeah.
that deep. We're not talking like, you know, they talk about plane crashes up in like Alaska and things, you know, and they find pieces of the plane miles from where it crashed because the glaciers move. This an avalanche would cause a lot more tearing and ripping apart and things like that. You know?
And there would be like visible signs of bruising and stuff on their bodies for an
Yeah.
avalanche.
The melt though, melting.
Who knows? At the end of the day, who knows?
Yep.
We don't. I can't. We can debate it all night long.
Let's talk about theory. So my theory's military, 100%. Something spooked them. They ran. I don't think the military killed them, but I think it was a test and they got involved.
So I am there as well. There was an external force that made them leave the tent. I don't know what it was, whether it was military or something else. But the part that they left the tent in such a calm way is what gets to me. Like, if it was a blast, wouldn't you just bail? Like, the only panic was them cutting out of their tent and then walking, right? Like, it's
Or
not-
sneaking away from someone.
could be.
Oh,
Could be.
I didn't think of that.
Or sneaking
That's what I
away
said.
from a Russian Yeti.
Yeah.
Yeah. Isaac, what are you going with?
Yeah. Did they find any like vodka bottles in the tent?
It's Russia, dude. There's vodka bottles.
I'm sure there was alcohol in there. There was food in there.
It's on the mountain
Yeah.
anyways. It comes with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's where they get
I don't-
vodka.
Was it possible maybe they were having trouble staying warm, like even in the tent, and hypothermia started to set in then?
And then
And then that
Yeah.
made them start thinking crazy.
yes, that is a theory too. Yeah.
Possible. So what they were cooking inside of the tent, so they were also saying that maybe they didn't set up the tent properly
Yeah.
and it started to smoke out the tent, and that's why they cut themselves out of the tent.
Yeah. And
But
then breathing
they're all
all
grade 2 hikers that are experienced. So you would think that if they see a leak of smoke starting to come out, they would do something about it, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's not like it just immediately fills the tent with smoke.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I don't know. It's a tough one.
it is a tough one. So yeah, it's we'll probably leave it there for the night because we're already over an hour.
Mhm.
And then next week will be which one of your guys' movie picks? Isaac? Or
I think me. Yeah.
Okay, so we have Isaac's pick next week, and then the week after
Thank
that
God.
we should be doing a lighter-hearted episode on Expedition 33.
For sure.
So as always, be kind to yourselves, each other, and your insides, because Pizza After Midnight's a young man's game. Later.
Peace.
See you.